My name is Daniel. I've demonstrated that I can build my code, that I can run my code on at least one test case, and that when I run the auto runner, when I run the supplied auto runner script, I pass all the test cases that were provided, along with the test cases that I've added to it, and along with the invalid cases provided on top of the invalid cases that I added. So I pass everything, as you can see here. Now we're gonna run through my code. Okay. So we're gonna briefly run through here. So basically, what I have here is, all right. So yeah, basically how it works here is that, yeah. So when you run make run, the file. Okay, just let me show you first. When you go to the make file, right after the argument, there's a file parameter right here, file argument right here. Right? So what ends up happening is that the file that's in here is the one that's ran through, and you're probably thinking, okay, hold on a second, hold on a second, hold on, bro. How is that possible? Right? How do you know it's not running that one file? Okay, let me show you why that's not the case. All right. So and let me prove to you that I'm not doing anything wrong. Okay. All right. So this is the unaltered script, and I know Dr. Springwell, you're gonna check it, and I know you're gonna check it, but I didn't do anything wrong. I did exactly what I was supposed to do. The code works. It works. I have the build file and I have a make and a run function. It does work. And if you're not convinced that if you're convinced and if you think I did something shady, okay, let me prove to you that I didn't. Okay, so I'm gonna comment this out. Since I know Dr. Springwall is on to every student, let me make sure that he knows that I'm not full of crap. Okay, so even without it, it works. But if I want to run a specific file on one file, that's why I have this. That's why I have this right here. And there's no such thing as input.txt. Okay, and there has to be a argument defined if I want to run a single file, right? So it will still run everything correctly. And if you're suspicious that I rigged something, okay, let me prove to you that I didn't. Okay, the outputs are different. Okay, I'm not a magician. I'm not, I'm not, rigging everything. I'm not rigging anything. There, this is these are these different outputs, different inputs. Okay, I'm not doing anything, crazy Houdini or, you know, fix it or anything. I'm not. I'm just proving it to you that that it works as is intended. All right, and I know you'll look for yourself. All right, so you have with open args.file read plus. All right, so data read. All right, so what ends up happening is at the end of these files. Okay, let me go to one here. So at the end of these files, as I noticed, like as provided. So with the test cases that are provided, there's a new line at the very end of the output. Right? Just like there's a new line at the end of the input, right? But the truth is that the code will work no matter whether there's a new line at the end or not. It will work either way. It's not a requirement. It will still work either way. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so if it does happen to end with a new line character, I just account for it, right? So I do acknowledge that might not be necessary because I do strip it before because I do have it set up where I ignore the preceding and the trailing white space before I process it. And you're probably thinking, huh, what does that mean? Okay, all right, I'm gonna keep going. So if there's no data, input file is empty. So since I know Shady Professor can do anything he wants, I made sure that I counted for this. Okay, it was this file right here is empty. Okay, I'm not since I'm on the Shady Professor. I make gosh darn sure that I accounted for that. All right. So basically, there's no data. It's going to say it's empty. If there's and another thing that I accounted for is that if the input file does not contain any map constants, specifically, okay, so when you look at a map, specifically, it has the start constant and the end constant. These two constants, right? So essentially, if it doesn't contain either of these at all, if it doesn't contain anything of the sort at all, of those, the start and the end sequences, okay. So like basically, I have all these checks, okay, and essentially, if it doesn't pass all those checks, right? So what I'm essentially trying to avoid is a scenario where um so I'm trying, yeah, okay, so like, okay, no, so, oh, not, no, okay, not that test case. I'm trying to find the specific one, and now my fingers are extremely, yeah. So a test case like this, right? I just took a PDF file. So a PDF file like this. Oh shit, not this one. Oh no, no, not this one. Um, I don't remember which one. But the point is, if there's a PDF file and there's no map in there, okay, or you have a really insane, like, like base, 32 encoding, nothing that resembles a map at all, okay, you're gonna get this error message. All right, because if there's no open start, if there's no start sequence, no end sequence, we're not even, it's probably gonna fail here. Okay. All right. So this is so like once his map is verified, it goes through recursive, map parser. Okay, so I do okay, so another thing that's interesting. So I thought those were notable. I also account for the empty map scenario. Okay, so essentially, if it starts with the start sequence, it ends with it starts with a beginning sequence, ends with a end sequence, and if there's nothing inside, of it, there's no map in there. It's empty map found. So you just have a start open, a start sequence, and then a close start, open start, start sequence followed by an end sequence is what I define as an empty map. Okay, so but and if it contains anything else, and if it contains anything else, yeah. So if it gets to that point, so yeah. So basically, you get to hear if yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of logic here. So basically, if you get the check map boundaries at that point, that means that the values are neither a num, a string, or a JNOS map. All right, if it gets to that point, that means that all of these, essentially, that means that this right here failed. Okay, so basically, none of these are true. Right, so that's where hold on. Sorry, sorry. What I meant to say is that, yeah. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Trying to get this submitted. Yeah. So if if you have, so basically, if it's not doesn't follow the criteria for a map. So basically, I mean, it's not the nicest solution, but anyway, this is how I do it. Okay, so basically a map can have any preceding white space, right? It can have preceding white space, it can have a new line tab, a new line tab, or regular space. right? So I have that right here. So that's a lot of white space can be before or after, right? So, and then it looks for the start sequence, the begin sequence, which is this, and the end sequence at the end, and the map body. It's very simple. So it just has to contain anything here, right? So and you're probably thinking, okay, yeah, there's a little bit more to it. This has to be alphanumeric, right? And this is too broad, but I check for those things here. I verify the keys and the values here. But before I do that, I try to get the key value pairs, and and believe me, it does work. Okay, all right. I'm sure you'll find something, but that happens. So basically, if it doesn't match this criteria, it goes to check map boundaries. Right, so we have trailing character end sequence, leading character start sequence. So these are two patterns to check for leading and trailing characters. Right, so it will work for that's to account for cases like cases like this, or cases like this. Are there leading or trailing characters? Or do you have a map right here after this one? Because this is obviously, itself is not, there might be two maps on here, but at the very least there's expected to be one map per file. So like there could be other, but like if there could be other maps, but it has to be like as a list. So you could have a key, value, a list of key values, but you can't, this would be considered invalid. But if you combine it into one, it would still be invalid because you'd have duplicate keys, but you get the point. This is not, valid, and that would return, leading character, trailing characters found after the end sequence. So, interesting little nuggets right there. Um, yeah. So basically, if it passes through the right, so basically, if it is a map, right, if it is a map, it will go through the recursive map parser. Um, So essentially, what it does is it takes all of the keys and the values, assuming that the keys and the values are valid, which are already or checked prior to this. They are essentially what ends up happening is that, so this is like if there's a nested map, it will like call this recursively. So it converts the JNOS map into a dictionary, and then so like in this case, I'm basically, if there are any, if there are what I'm doing, if there are any like percent encoding here, if it's a comic, should I go ahead and I unquote it here, right? If it's a JNOS num, if it's a valid JNOS num, I convert it to the decimal value from 2's complement. Remove the trailing s of its simple string. All the keys values stored in a dictionary, and then once after I do that, after that happens, it will go through a print map. So I need to slow down a little bit so you can see. So I convert to a dictionary first, but before I head and continue with it. So I convert to a dictionary before I parse it. So obviously beginning map, begin map, end map. So it's parsing the dictionary. I converted, the JNOS map into a dictionary before I parse it, and that's how I did that. Right. So I think I'm done talking. All right. Hopefully I do well.